It is an exciting day here at WagerTalk TV. I am Kelly Stewart, also known as Kelly in Vegas. You guys know Marco D'Angelo. We've done tons of stuff with him at Marco in Vegas. And then we have one of my favorite guys in the industry, and I've never got to do videos with him before, so it's super exciting. Vegas runner at Greek _ gambler. Make sure you guys follow him on Twitter. We're going to talk about today some handicapping tips for the 2018 football season. Football season's about to kick off. Let's do this. Marco, tell me a team that you're kind of looking at for the early part of the season.
Well, obviously everybody knows I'm from Pittsburgh and I follow the Steelers very closely. And the Steelers this year, we know the offense is going to be good, but they didn't do enough in the offseason to fix the holes in the defense. The loss with the injury to Ryan Shazier, I mean, not only was he a great player, but he was the leader he was the quarterback on the defense, setting, the schemes and everything, calling the plays. And the Steelers have been getting torched in the preseason. And I know you say don't overreact to preseason. Well, coming in, I was suspect of this defense, and now it's confirmed for me. So early on, until they stabilize it, I'm going to be betting full game overs. And I'm going to look to the opponent that they're playing and take their team total over. And that might even be the better play because the Steelers are going to be favorites. And you know how they figured the lines with the, here's the over-under, here's what the spread is, this is what the team total is going to be. It's going to be skewed to the Steelers because they're supposed to cover the spread. I think you're going to get a lot of value with taking the overs with them.
Good stuff. So, VR, we're handicapping games. It's Sunday afternoon. The lines for the next week come out. What's the first thing you do?
Honestly, before I ever even look at what the lines are posted, I got to create my own. And whether you do it sophisticatedly or you just do it by being a fan of watching football so much, but you have to have something to compare what the odds makers put out. You're not going to go shop for a car without already having an idea of what the price of that car should be in mind. You're not going to walk in, the dealer's going to say it's 40 grand. You're going to say, okay, 40 grand, that sounds good. You're going to already have done your research and know whether that's a good deal or not. And more importantly, the reason for that is because you may think differently. And that point spread, seeing Team A favored, while you may have thought Team B should be favored, all of a sudden that's going to skew your opinion. And why that's important, whenever the playoffs come around, you always hear just pick the winner and you'll cover the spread. We know in the playoffs, 83% of the time, the team that wins covers the spread. In I think the wild card round, it's close to 90% if you just pick the winner of the game. Well, it's pretty much the same thing over the NFL season. If you go back over 6,000 plays, so this is a big sample size, you'll see that it's pretty much the exact same number. 83% of the time, the team that wins the game covers the spread. So if you're betting the favorite, it's usually going to be a blowout. And if you bet the dog, that means don't be afraid to sprinkle that money line because more times than not, the spread will not come into play.
Very nice. What do you think, Marco? So we talk about public bets. 77% of the tickets are on the public, and everybody's like, well, don't be a contrarian. The public's not always wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I like to be a contrarian because we know for the most part, you talk to anybody that takes bets, the majority of people lose. That's the fact. It's a small percentage of people that are actually win. But the thing is, we always talk about value. You hear everybody say, well, this is a plus EV play, or I'm getting the benefit of the number. Well, if you're a contrarian, you're always going to get built-in value, because the public is driving that number the other way. If that team was on Monday Night Football last week and they won in a romp, everybody saw it, they're betting them the next week. Don't be afraid to jump in front of that team. Be out there by yourself. Get those extra points. Look for the value.
Especially in NFL, not to interrupt, where the public money does sway lines. Yeah. It's different college basketball over-under of an obscure team.
Right.
But call NFL college football. Public money does matter. It does move
tell me
lines.
about this then, VR. The Cleveland Browns, they were the sharp play the last 2 years, only 8-24 against the spread. Absolute terrible bet, but you got value on them each week. How do you go about betting bad teams?
More times than not, you're going to be on bad teams if you're contrarian, like Marco touched on. We know in the NFL that double-digit favorites, that's one of my best things to fade. Double-digit favorites, if you just fade them blindly, they cover 40% of the time. So it's 53%, you're not going to make much money. But we know that double-digit road favorites only cover 40% of the time. So you're going to cash 6 out of 10 tickets just blindly betting the home dog getting double digits. So you could sleep in Sunday. You don't have to do any handicapping. If there's a double-digit home dog, bet it. But more importantly, I say if you're going to bet those ugly teams, like you touched on the Cleveland Browns, bet the first half. Because what usually happens, kind of like in boxing and MMA, the cream rises to the top, and you systematically break your opponent down. And so many times that bad team comes out, they're fired up, especially if they're at home or for other reasons. They play a great first half, that you think they're in it, and all of a sudden Tom Brady throws 4 touchdowns in the second half, and New England wins by 28, and they cover the spread. So don't be afraid to look to bet the first half. Plus, you're usually getting more value. A line that's, minus 10 for the game, a lot of times you'll get plus 6 for the first half. It's not cut directly in half. So you're getting a little extra value. So what I mean is don't overlook the first halves, especially if you're betting bad teams, because those are the ones that usually get blown out late as the talent starts to take over.
To add to what he's saying there, too, with a bad team, you say how they get broken down as the game goes on. Also, a bad team, sometimes you'll have that one play, that one turnover, and then because they are a losing team, they have that mindset, and it's over. Well, second half, if you're playing a full game, you got more chance of that. If you're taking it in the first half, they're still excited, they're in the game.
You're still motivated, yeah.
So let's talk about a little bit of stuff that I get questions about a lot being a woman. Being too emotional. Women are too emotional about sports is my favorite tweet. So I think you have to take some emotional out of it. Talk to me about how you called it earlier, being a robot.
Yeah, you do. You got to know what your plan is of how you're betting, whether you're doing flat betting or you're doing a 3, 4%, 5% of bankroll. Whatever it is, that's what you do. Sit down, and it's automatic. You don't look at, well, this week, I like this game, but I like it a little bit more. It's the Steelers. It's me. Steelers, I'm going to bet a little more because it's my team. They're there. Take that out of the picture. Go to the window. You know what you're supposed to play. You play it. Forget about it. Whether you're winning or losing, don't put, because too often the mistake happens that when you're losing, that's where the emotion comes in. Now you start pressing, and then you make those mistakes. You might be a guy that's betting, say, $300 a game, and you're down four games come Monday. All of a sudden, you're betting a dime. You want to cut into that deficit. Well, now you took, what was a bad week and made it a really bad week. Be a robot. Know what you're supposed to play. Make your plays. Go to the window. That's it.
Nice stuff. VR, I know you have a little touch on that money management that Marco just brought up. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'm like a broken record. That's always my key points to touch on is money management, because without correct money management, your winning percentage is irrelevant. You could hit 80% and you're still going to go broke if you don't bet correctly. My thing is this. You need to first go into the season realistically. Let's tell it like it is. You start off with a $1,000 bankroll. What are you expecting to turn that into over the course of a season? You start out even with $5,000. What do you expect to turn that into? I mean, let's start with a $1,000 bankroll. If you make a 20% on your money, $200, a 20% return on investment sounds great. You see people on Twitter all day bragging about stocks that have gone up 20% in a year. Mm-hmm. If you do that in a season, no one's excited in football or in betting sports because they expect you equate gambling with making a score. So that 1,000 is supposed to turn into 1 million. That's not going to happen. What kind of businesses can you start with 1,000? It's going to make you $1 million in a number of months. 9 times out of 10, you're going to lose that original 1,000. So be realistic with your goals. And more importantly, I always say choose your bet size and stick to it through thick and thin. Decide that before the season begins, and if you could even do that just for 3 months, make yourself do it. Don't do it for me, do it for you. Honestly, try it for just 3 months. Don't change your bet size no matter how hot you're running or how cold you're running, and you'll see the difference in the amount of money you either make or the amount of money you save and not lose compared to changing that bet size up and down. I don't mean not adjust based on your confidence, but you can't change bet size like Marco said. Your goal is betting 300 a game, and all of a sudden they're $1,000 games. If you haven't decided prior to the season that I'm going to bet 300 on my normal plays and my best bets I'm going to bet 1,000, then there's absolutely zero reason you should ever do that. So for me, I say you got to stay consistent, or else it's going to be a hard thing to turn a profit.
I love it. All right, I'm going to let Marco have the last word here. Marco, last tip for the 2018 betting season. Let's talk a little bit about key numbers.
Yeah, line moves. And I'll tell you, you hear this phrase from, professional bettors. Teams don't bet. They don't bet teams, they bet numbers. I'm going to say there's a couple spots where you deviate from that. And this is one of the ones in college football that has been absolute gold for me. When you see a number that's hung up at 7 or 7.5, and it's been sitting basically there all week, and then you get to game day. Now, when a number's 7.5, the guys that bet teams and bet numbers, obviously they're grabbing the plus 7.5. And when that number, if it on game day goes through the 7 and goes to 6.5, the numbers guys are grabbing that minus 6.5. And I'm going to tell you, they're losing that bet. If you see a game in college football that goes through that key number of 7, how much money has to be made to let the books risk the exposure of having a 7 sit out there? It ain't happening. It is really good steam. That is one to jump on. And yes, you're getting the worst of the number, but I'll have that argument with people all day long. You give me a winning ticket with a bad number, any day over a losing ticket with a good number.
Good stuff. I always love a little reverse line movement myself. Always makes me feel good about holding that nice plus ticket with my dog. Tuesday is always $2 Tuesdays, and you get the hottest handicapper at WagerTalk. Talk's best bet for just $2.